Welcome back, folks. It's Craig Bushon live at an event that you should have been at. But if you weren't, great news. Be First in Media was here because our job is to be where you can't be. This hyper-local side of media that's kind of disappeared, almost everywhere in this country. We're making sure that we are building strong teams to go out, just like we're doing now, and interviewing the candidates that really affect your life. I mean, listen, the saying is politics is, the most important, closest to home. And we're going to talk a little bit about that with the person to my left. And full disclosure, he's a friend of mine. I personally endorse him and believe that he is the right person for the job. And you can push on me and ask me 50 different ways on why you think that I believe that's true. But today, I'm going to let Tony Dale talk about that. I'm going to let him talk about why he thinks the man of the job. And welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you, first of all, what an event you had here today.
Thank you. Yeah, it was
a lot of people.
A lot of people. It's always gratifying when you do an event and people come out. Sometimes you see people that you don't really expect, but a campaign is not an individual effort. It's a team effort, and some people help by walking door to door, some do phone calls, some send emails to their friends, and some people can contribute. But you got to do all those things.
Sure.
And it's just really gratifying when you see that kind of support.
Well, we're speaking with some colleagues of yours, City Council, and then also the mayor of Cedar Park, and they both said the same thing, and they didn't even hear each other speak. So I don't think it was planned. They said that you're the right person for the job because you're a real person. You're a real person who's really getting. You're not getting involved. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but here's the way I look at it. We don't need people who want to be career politicians. We need people who are going into politics to fix what's wrong in this country, from the very local level to people who are in city council, all the way up to the president of the United States. Tell the folks why you're doing it. I mean, you're a veteran. I mean, you're still serving. You're still engaged. You're hanging around with the folks who are battling out there. You're a mentor to people. You've been out to the Heroes Night Out in Cedar Park. You do lots of stuff to give back to the veteran world. Mm-hmm. But just because you're a veteran doesn't mean you should be a state representative. Just because you're a city council person doesn't mean you should be a state representative. Tell the folks why you're doing this.
Well, I am an elected official today. I'm on Cedar Park City Council, so one could say, well, look, he's just trying to move to the next level and all that. But the reason I'm on City Council is sort of interesting because I was on the Planning and Zoning Commission in the city, just helping Cedar Park with its growth and development. They need volunteers, and I was actually at a meeting where a lot of people showed up. There were over 80 people, and they were really riled up over this particular zoning case about a gas station that's going to go in somewhere. And I saw it, and I was just like, wow, that's the work that board does is really important, and I felt that I could contribute and be a good member of that board, so I volunteered to do it. And it's just a way to serve the community. And about a year later, I had heard that we might have 3 members of City Council leaving, and I got concerned about that because I really liked the direction that the City Council was going. So I started preparing myself really more in a defensive way, not because I like serving my community. I was a Cub Scout, a Boy Scout, got my Eagle Scout, served the country as a Army guy, and this planning and zoning thing was another way to do it. But I got real concerned about who might get on City Council and if it would change the direction of where the city was going. So I started preparing myself to do it, and I ended up getting a slot on City Council in 2009. But really, like I said, sort of from a defensive standpoint, you also need to have people in government that will question what's happening in government.
Sure, and not afraid to question.
Sure, and we rely on our staff. We have a good staff that runs the city, a professional staff, and the City Council is more like a board of directors where we set the policies for the city. We expect the staff to carry out the policies set out by the City Council. But not every idea that comes up is necessarily a good idea. So I think you need people that are willing to question what the proposals are and make sure that it's the right thing. Is it legal and constitutional? And even if it is it the right thing to do after that? So that's part of the role that I think I fulfill on City Council. So when you think about me getting on city council sort of in a defensive way to keep the city going in the direction that it had been, when this seat was created, I did not intend to run for this seat. In fact, I set out to find the candidate, and I met with the top 20 community leaders that I could identify, and we're asking them, like, Craig, are you running? You know,
Right.
okay, yet
Well, you're
no.
being polite.
Well, you know, and then
That's
I'd go to the next person and say, are you running? Yes, no, maybe, and kind of make the list, and you know, things started to change, and there were people that I thought were very qualified that would be very good servants to Williamson County that started saying no, because this is a weird position. You know, state representatives don't really get paid for the work they do.
No.
And
What do they pay? How much is it per month? Is it 400 or?
I don't know how much it is
It's not
per
much, I
month,
know
but it's
that.
like 7,200 a year.
Yeah. Not
So, and it takes, once you're in session, it takes a lot of time. So you have to be in a position where that's not going to destroy your family
Right.
or your business, and that's challenging to
Sure.
find the person that can do it, but also someone that's qualified that really represents the values of the community. And as people started to say no, I got concerned again, because I thought, wow, I mean, these people are really good. I know they would serve Williamson County well, and that's when I started to consider it.
because that would create a vacuum, you know, and then you don't know if the strong people that you were searching out for or asking say no, then who's going to fill it? And then and usually when something is filled with a vacuum, it's not always the greatest thing in the world that ends up there.
Yeah, and we have a lot of people that I think would do an excellent job as state representative, but unfortunately for various reasons they decided not to do it, and so I decided to do it. You know, I stepped in.
And here you are, HD 136. Talk about House District 136, kind of where it's at, and then what are the key things that you think need to be addressed, you know, if and when you get elected.
Yeah, House District 136 is a new district that was created because of the redistricting process that the state goes through every 10 years. And it includes some great communities. You've got the northwest portion of Austin that's in Williamson County. You've got the city of Cedar Park and Leander, as well as two pretty big municipal utility districts called Fern Bluff and Brushy Creek. So it's geographically very small, unlike a lot of districts in the state.
Sure.
There are, you know, multiple counties. This is really the southwestern portion of Williamson County. So the communities share a lot in common. It's very suburban. Lots of families just like mine, you know, husband and wife.
Moving those directions, lots of growth.
That's true, a lot of growth. But you got a lot of families that are just like mine. You know, we're all working. We're going to church on Sunday, and we've got our kids in school, and you're trying to keep up with homework and sports
Sure.
and religious education and all the. You've got kids.
Absolutely.
Well, your son's here.
He's
and
right there, absolutely.
You're always chasing your kids around, and that's where you focus a lot of your time. So when I look at the issues that we have, I mean, everybody that lives up here knows what the issues are. I mean, we moved to Williamson County for a reason, because there's a low cost of living, there's a low crime rate, you've got great schools and wonderful communities. So I'm dedicated to making sure that we continue to have that in Williamson County, and what can we do to make it better? You know, so you've got good schools. We want to make sure that we preserve what we have and actually make it even better, because I think when it comes to education dollars, it's a huge portion of the state budget. And I'd like to see less money going towards bureaucracy and more really going towards education of students in the classroom and teachers. So it's kind of like you got to have a test. And the test, I say, is when you spend this money, is it going to improve student achievement? And if it doesn't, you really need to question whether or not you should spend
sure.
that piece of the education dollar on that.
Well, it was a big press news today, you know, that the lieutenant governor of the state, Dewhurst, has, you know, they're really pushing, you know, the money following the student, being able to, what's the term that they use? Being able to, if it costs an average of about $7,500 to $8,000 for each student. If you're a Hispanic child, it jumps up to $11,000 if you have a bilingual issue and things like that. But being able to have that money for, like, homeschooling, for example, there's people who homeschool. It's hard. It's people struggle to homeschool these days.
Mm-hmm.
People believe that the educational system is broken in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Not just here locally, across the whole United States of America.
Mm-hmm.
There's teacher unions to be dealt with. There's all these vouchers now that are starting to be pushed by now the lieutenant governor. And, you know, I think it's a good thing when money goes to the people to be able to control what happens to them personally. And education is, besides health, being a healthy person, what you learn and how you learn it, that's one of the most important things we have to deal with in this country.
Well, there's no doubt that education can be a pathway to success, and if you're not educated properly through whatever you're going through, whether it be homeschool or private school, public school, if you're not prepared to enter into the economy and sustain your family, you're going to be behind the curve. So you've got to make sure that student achievement is at the forefront.
That's right.
So that means, we've got to prepare kids. Not every kid's going to go to college. I certainly hope my children do. My wife and I both did. But they may not want to.
They may want to be an entrepreneur. They may want to start their own small business. They may want to do a lot of things.
That's right. It may not be their cup of tea. So you've got a lot of focus today on just that piece. And that's leaving some kids behind. We need to prepare them so if they want to go to college, they can go to college. We're lacking in vocational training, skilled trade training for kids. Back probably we're about the same age, I'm sure. And I remember we were exposed to shop and mechanics and all that kind of
trades.
Stuff. We've lost all that somewhere along the way. And I was able to determine that I had zero aptitude for those kind of things.
Sure, well, not everyone has that skill set.
But at least it helped me discern that was not the right path for Tony Dale. But there are a lot of great jobs in the state of Texas today for people that have that kind of skilled trade training. Welders are in great demand here in Texas. The oil and gas boom is just got jobs.
And if that pipeline
crazy.
ever comes here, even from Canada, that would be another great job explosion for welders.
Well, even without that, though, there's so many opportunities, and some of them are up to six figures. They're getting their certificates and right into the job, making a lot of money where they can sustain themselves and their families. Same thing for truck drivers, certainly 6 figures and above for a lot of truck drivers here in the state of Texas, and other kind of jobs like that. It's really amazing, but we are not exposing our students to that kind of opportunity. They may not even identify that they've got the aptitude, or they're going through a program where they get discouraged because it's all focused on college, and they're not being prepared to get out of high school and do something like that. So you got to look at that as well. Or the students need to be prepared. If they want to go into the military, they can go into that, or just get a job right out of school. It's not necessarily one track, so you've got to have some flexibility. And, I look at it and say, you were talking about local government earlier. One of the things that's great about local government is that the government that is closest to the people is the one that governs less. So local, limited, and accountable. Well, when you think about the really, truly lack of local control that we have in education here in Texas, there's some, but not enough. So I'd rather have decision-making at a higher level. When I say a higher level, I mean a more responsive level, from a school board that meets every 2 weeks as opposed to a legislature that meets every 2 years.
Right.
Because, we know in Round Rock ISD and Leander ISD what's best for our communities. And there's other communities that are going to say, you know what? We've got tons of manufacturing jobs that can't be filled, and we're having to import people from other areas, and the local students are missing those opportunities. You might be able to have a greater impact.
And that's the big argument with the 10th Amendment, the power to the states that trickles right down to your local community, right in Cedar Park. So there's a whole there's a lot of battling that has to be done to really fix some of the ways that money is spent in this country, and pulling it back to the states. Because when it pulls it back to the states, where it should be, it gets to the people a lot more efficiently than if the government's trying to spend it for us. Now, real quick, got a couple minutes left here, and again, folks, we are speaking with Tony Dale. Tony Dale is somebody that you need to pay attention to. If you go to TexansForTonyDale.com, he's running for House District 136. Now, you have someone running against you. His name is Matt Stillwell. Is that his name?
I've got two opponents. I've got Matt Stillwell's a Democrat, and Matt Whittington is a Libertarian candidate.
Yes. Oh, yeah, the Libertarians. We never forget about them. I don't mean to Gary Johnson's also running. No one hears about it, in the presidential race. But the fact is, they both believe that they're the better person for the job. Okay. What separates you, and if you want to include both of them, fine. What separates you from them? Why are you better than they are to fill this seat?
Well, really, I think one of the things that voters can do is they can look at my record on Cedar Park City Council When I talk about limiting government and making sure that the U.S. government focuses on what they're supposed to do based on the U.S. Constitution, the state should focus on their state responsibilities and state constitution. Cities should focus on what they have in their city charter. I've got a record of not just saying I'm a fiscal conservative, but actually acting on that. I've never voted to raise taxes in the city of Cedar Park. I'm committed to balancing the Texas budget without raising taxes. We talk about reducing debt at all levels. There's too much debt. We looked at that in the city of Cedar Park, and we saw that in out years coming up, we were going to have more bonds come due because we have to build roads and pipelines and things like that
Sure.
for water and wastewater. So you sell bonds for that. Well, you got to pay it back. Well, I'd rather not do that with a tax increase. So we were able to take part of what's called our fund balance, which is essentially a savings account for the city, and pay down future debt payments so that we could avoid future tax increases. Now, we talk about it, pay down debt. Well, it can be done if you set your priorities. We could have done other stuff with that money, but I felt it was more important to pay down debt to avoid tax increases in the future. And we've done things on the Cedar Park City Council like institute E-Verify, a government program
Sure.
that you can, when you're hiring a new employee, you can say, is this person legal to work in the United States? You can enter their information into the computer and it tells you that. Well, now we use E-Verify for all prospective city employees. So we're making sure we're employing people that are only legal
Sure.
to work in the United
Very
States.
efficient.
I mean, it's very common sense, low cost, but we didn't have that policy
Common
before.
sense. Well, there doesn't seem to be as much of that in government as there should be, and the fact that you're talking about that and even saying the words common sense tells me that you must have some of it, because the reality is I'm going to be at an event tomorrow. I'm going to be with Janine Turner and probably 1,000 or 1,200 people, and it's a big Wilco Tea Party thing in Williamson County, and there's a whole lot of retarees there. It's a majority of retarees. I mean, listen, when you're retired, you're not supposed to have to go out and do rallies, and they're doing these rallies. There's a lot of stuff going on in politics today, and when you get right down to it, with the people I had on the show earlier, and all the way down to Mr. Greg Abbott, being approachable, being a regular person. I believe why one of the reasons the lieutenant governor lost the race to Ted Cruz is he's not an approachable person, and that means something to people. People want somebody that, like Mayor Powell was talking about, you're in an HEB and someone walks up and says, hey, how are you doing? What's going on with the streets? Or whatever. And actually turn around and speak to them.
Yeah.
And that's what I see in you. Is that a fair assessment? You're an approachable person. I mean, you can't talk to everyone every minute, but it's important to be someone that smiles at people, that says, hey, I care about you. I think people in America, all the way down to Texas for sure, all the way down to your house district, they want people who look them in the eyes and care about them, and care about their family, not just saying it, but really doing it.
Well, it's funny because Mayor Powell and I shop at the same HEB, and it's true. People do come up to us, and we're recognizable in the community. But Mayor Powell and I are both very active in the community, and we were before we were on city council. So we were part of the community before we tried to represent the community, and people do talk to you. I mean, I see them at Home Depot. I mean,
Sure.
I buy my own milk and groceries. I try and help out my wife Mary when I can, and it's a joint responsibility. So sometimes I'm going, sometimes she's going, but it's important to get out there because we are not the fountain of all great ideas. A lot of the best ideas are coming from the people in the community.
Sure,
and that doesn't mean to do more. Sometimes it means to do less. Because
right.
One of the things people ask all the time is, well, what are the things you're going to do as the next state rep? And one of the things I tell them is that, well, if you're counting on me to introduce a lot of bills to do new things, I'm probably not the right guy for you, because I believe in limited government. I'm not saying I'm not going to have legislation, but I'm hoping some of my legislation is to expand liberty and freedom and not to add more restrictions on people, because government can be a very powerful tool. It can also be a very powerful weapon. And I think that we've got a lot of laws. We instituted a program in Cedar Park that we didn't have before, where we said we want to review every single ordinance that we have in the city over a period of time, find out where we've got duplication with state law, and repeal the city ordinances that are duplicative. Why have a law at the local level if there's one at the state level or federal level?
That's right.
It doesn't make any sense. It just makes it more complicated to do business in a town or to live there. And we've actually repealed a couple laws. And you know what? They were small and they weren't important, but they're not on the books anymore. And that's a good thing because we've got laws that already cover it. So,
well, that's the key. The cleaning house we always talk about, or we hear about, I should say, by politicians is just that. Really getting in, sifting through it. The promise that this president that said he was going to do, of course he didn't do, he added more. But the bottom line is that we need people to pay attention to what other people like Tony Dale are saying, and then we have to hold people accountable. We have to make sure that they do what they say they're going to do, because in the same way that people can be repealed, you can repeal something, the voting public have forgotten that to vote is powerful, and when you vote, you can help get people repealed or impeached if they don't do their job. And so part of what has to happen is this really educating the people out there why voting is important, why they need to pay attention to who they vote for, and then if they don't do it, they can do something about it. And that's just the way it is. I want to thank you so much. Again, it's Texans for TonyDale.com. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Well, I'm glad you're here, and thanks for the opportunity. And I agree with you. People need to vote, and just I tell people, I said, look, I want your vote and I want your prayers. If I can't get both, I'd like at least one. So
that's right. Well, there you have it. I guess we'll leave it with that. And again, this is Craig Bushon with Be First in Media. And make sure you go to BeFirstInMedia.com. We're also going to have this posted on Facebook. We'll have different snippets from the different interviews. And listen, pass it around. Get people's feedback. Listen, don't take my opinion about Tony Dale. You have your opinion about Tony Dale. And, the bottom line is, stay engaged. They're on Facebook. They're on Twitter. His campaign, himself,